I am joined by J. Warner Wallace, one of my absolute favorite Christian apologists. You have tons of books. Forensic Faith, the famous one, Cold Case Christianity, God's Crime Scene. But what I want to talk about is from the first 11 chapters of Genesis.
Oh my gosh, you're really going to talk about the first 11 chapters?
I feel like that's what messes people up.
Let's just try to get a small thing to talk about, right?
Right, but I feel like that creation story really trips people up because they say, oh, well, maybe there was an Abraham and a Jesus and blah, blah, blah. But that creation story is just hard for me to contextualize that with science. So here's the question. As Mr. Cold Case, why do you believe in the first 11 chapters of Genesis, specifically that in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth?
Well, I mean, look, even if you aren't and I was not raised in the church, so I came at it a slightly different way. I did, though, as an atheist, believe in Big Bang cosmology. That is still the standard cosmological model amongst physicists. Even though there are multiverse people and all kinds of other theories out there, still the majority would say that the entire universe, all space, time, and matter came into existence from nothing. That's the claim of science right now. At least that's the standard model. Well, that means that whatever causes space, time, and matter to come into existence cannot be itself spatial, temporal, or material, right? So we're already getting pretty close to a description that kind of matches what Scripture says about everything coming into existence from nothing. I was somebody who would have at least given you that. As a non-believer, I would have said, well, that part, I hadn't thought deeply about what that means. Because space, time, and matter cannot create itself under the scientific model. And no space, time, or matter existed before the beginning of the universe under the scientific model. But that means then that all space, time, and matter came out of nothing. Now, when I say nothing, most of the people I'm talking to think, well, you like space. No. Space is not nothing. Space is something.
Yeah.
I'm talking about true nothing. What Aristotle said rocks think about. Nothing. Okay? Nothing. And that's what we're really aiming at here. So then the question becomes, there has to be a causal force that can cause all space, time, and matter to come into existence from nothing. And that's where the scientific debate seems to be. Like, what is the cause of space, time, and matter? But if we already know it has to be powerful, it has to transcend, it has to be outside of space, time, or matter. Wow, that's a pretty decent beginning step in the direction of some. The only question really is this force personal or impersonal? That's really the only question that's left. I think the evidence in the universe, to me, leans far more toward a personal agent than an impersonal force. So I'm kind of stuck. Look, in the end, this does not mean Christianity is true or that Genesis is true. It just means that we're really close. If you're a non-Christian or a non-theist, you already believe there's something powerful outside of space, time, and matter if you accept the arguments of science.
Yeah.
So now the question is, could that thing be personal? Because if it is, there's no miracle in the New Testament that's really all that amazing compared to everything from nothing.
Okay, so my friend here might be saying, you know what? I need to see things. I believe in science. I believe in things that are testable. And the first 11 chapters of Genesis, it's just
never sit on a jury. Never sit on a jury, because every jury every day is asked to make a decision about what happened in the past, although we cannot run a test to demonstrate or to make it happen again. Those sets of circumstances aligned in a certain way that caused that murder 30 years ago, and I'm sorry, we cannot run a test so it's not testable in that way. We can use forensic science to determine certain things, but we cannot say, well, I cannot believe something I cannot make a decision about something you can't see. Well, then don't ever serve on a jury, because jurors do that all the time. By the way, you've already made these decisions about things. You have a certain belief, for example, about your own family heritage, yet you weren't there for any of it, except for the generation you're living in. You think you know something about your great-grandparents. Well, what, are you trusting an eyewitness? Are you trusting somebody who's making a claim about the distant past?
Great point.
Maybe they didn't even see it.
Yeah.
How do you know it even happened? So it seems to me we are willing to move every day and believe things that we cannot see or already too far in the past for us ever to see, yet we are convinced they happened until, of course, the claim is about a God that has a calling on your life. In other words, that has an expectation of you.
Yeah.
That would a belief that you'd have to bend your knee to embrace. Let's put it this way. If you were to look at the New Testament and all the claims about Jesus, and Jesus in the New Testament was just a first century rabbi, not even a miracle worker, just a dude, just a guy in the first century, never rose from the grave, not born of a virgin, never worked a single miracle. There wouldn't be a single scholar on planet Earth that would argue that Jesus of Nazareth was not a historical person. We have so much there's not a better attested ancient than Jesus of Nazareth if you take out all the miracles. But you insert one miracle and suddenly skepticism is at heights that can't even be crossed. I'm sorry, there's no way this could be true.
Yeah.
But that tells me that the issue is not the manuscript evidence.
Yeah.
The issue is your presuppositional bias against the supernatural.
That's good. That's good.
So what happens is we end up staying out because, by the way, if there's a God who has a way of life that is holy, that we can identify and ought to emulate, oh my gosh, now you're saying I have to be committed to this?
Yeah.
You know what keeps people in juries from serving well? Is if they have prior commitments before they actually hear the evidence. If they're committed to a certain
These
view,
are good points.
you're like done. You can't have them on a jury. So what I have to pick, and we have a process by which we're trying to identify everyone's prior commitments so we can not impanel them.
Wow. Wow.
So we're doing the same thing here.
That's good.
If you have a prior commitment, then trust me, you'll find a way to reject the Bible, to reject Jesus of Nazareth. No problem, I get it. But it doesn't mean it's not true. It just means that you are beholden to your prior commitment.
So we are at the Bless God Summit here in Carlsbad, California, and there's a bunch of apologists. And if there's one thing I know about apologists, you guys are always working on something. You're always on to the next thing. So last question, what's firing you up right now?
Well, I do think that we're moving from a world that was in my generation was probably more concerned with, is it true? Give me the evidence for this. And I think we are now living in a generation, my grandchildren will be raised in a generation that is more concerned with, is it beautiful? Is it good? Yeah, it has to be true, I believe, in order for it to be beautiful or good. But I'm not sure everyone's convinced of that. But they really want to know, is it beautiful and good? So the projects we're working on now are basically graphic novels, fiction, that tries to argue for the beauty of, the goodness of, and we're going to do it not by making a 5-point argument. Here's the 5 pieces of evidence. Let me bring you into a journey. Come along in this story with us, and let's see if you end up experiencing something beautiful.
Yeah.
And if you do, at least it'll open the door to hearing where that beauty came from, the gospel. So I think you have to bite the apple from both sides.
I love it. J. Warner Wallace, my friend. Thank you so much.
I appreciate you.